All right, so we have some just breaking news, really, to start this podcast off with. I didn't see this coming. I know you certainly didn't see it coming either. Nobody saw it coming in the wrestling community. The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, has been released from WWE. The news broke American time, Eastern time, around like 2, 3 p.m., just in the middle of the day, randomly. Like WWE, they made a tweet and then they deleted it. And then news companies screenshotted this and they were retweeting it. And then it was like, wait, is this real? And then WWE tweets again. And it was real. Bray Wyatt is gone. So I don't even really even know what to say. What do you have to say?
I mean, absolutely shocking. Like we've seen this a bit this year. That now with Nick Khan involved in WWE, there's seemingly like a reckless abandon and like no regard for human life when it comes to these business decisions.
Mm-hmm.
This one particularly, like Bray Wyatt's such an interesting case, and I mean we'll talk a bit at length for this little opening the lead heat here, but like the amount of resources, Kevin, they put into this guy over the course of 8 years, and to just let him go like that, it is baffling to me. But
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, my initial reaction, I looked at it and I was like, okay, Bray Wyatt's gone. So obviously, the first thing you think of is, oh, he's going to AEW. Like that seems like right in 3 months we're gonna be talking about, oh, Bray Wyatt is in the Impact Zone, or not the Impact Zone.
the impact zone.
We're gonna be talking about, oh, Bray Wyatt is on Dynamite, or whatever he's gonna go by. She's obviously not gonna go by Bray Wyatt. But what do you think Bray Wyatt is going to look like in AEW if he does go there? Do you think we're gonna see him as like a regular guy? Is he gonna be like another? Is he gonna be a similar gimmick to the Fiend?
Oh, by God, Bray Rotunda's in the impact zone, John. Like, I just, yeah, I think I can't see them doing that same fiend bit with Bray Wyatt and AEW. I think the AEW fan base, I mean, granted, they'll love anything they do, but I don't think they'd be as receptive. This is the same AEW fan base and AEW crowd who for literally like 6 straight years have given Bray Wyatt like worst match of the year, worst character of the year. Like that's that fan base, which it's interesting to see now. Now that Bray Wyatt is probably going to go to AEW and he's been released, and WWE are bad for doing the release. Now all of a sudden, a bunch of these people are Bray Wyatt fans, Kevin. You never would have seen it coming.
Absolutely. Same. It's the same thing with Daniel Bryan and so on and so forth. It's this change. Everybody hops on the bandwagon, I guess you could say.
More so with Bray though, because like you've done with Bryan, like I mean, technical wrestling fans, indie fans, etc., AEW like hardcore fans, anti WWE people, they were always kind of like, oh, I love Bryan Danielson, blah blah blah. Whereas with Bray Wyatt, it's like, can't wrestle, he can't go bell to bell, he can't deliver that 5-star classic that I need that keeps me going. So in that regard, Kevin, yeah, Bray Wyatt to AEW, it's been interesting to see the reception, especially. I mean, my God, the toxicity today on social media, which it's like Bray Wyatt makes the whole point about mental health constantly, which first and foremost, Kevin, I think as a podcast, you must say thoughts and well wishes with Bray Wyatt just generally. The last 8 months he's had, particularly, I don't envy at all losing such a close friend like John Huber. So, yeah, I think that's priority number one, I'd say.
Yeah, his mental health. That's the biggest deal. Really, like that's more important than wrestling. It's bigger than wrestling, and we wish him well. I don't know. Like a lot of people thought, oh, maybe he wanted to take a break from wrestling. I don't think that's the case. I don't think he wants to step away and not wrestle for like 3 to 4 years at a time and then come back. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what's gonna happen with Bray Wyatt? We're being like, there's rumors we're being told by the media that he was made aware of his release from text messages. He got a text from like Johnny Ace saying, "Oh, you're gone, kid, because of budget cuts." Like, I want to say that that's not true, but who knows?
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Like the whole budget cuts thing. I don't. Yeah, I can see where they're coming from. Yeah, okay. Bray Wyatt is making X amount, probably upwards of 7 figures. High 6 figures, upwards of 7 figures, and he hasn't been on TV in 4 or so months. So in that regard, that's what, if they're doing the budget cuts thing, that's what Nick Khan's looking at and going, "I'll just get rid of him. We can add an extra 1 million per like annually to our profit margins. Why not?" Like I guess that's the business standpoint, but in that regard, then it's just a mess, Kevin. Like I don't know. I don't like it like that. I don't like it.
Yeah, and if that's true, let's just say that's a really classless way to get rid of somebody. Just be like, oh yeah, sorry, you're gone, you're done over text. It just, anything's possible. We see it all the time with like in sports where players talk about, oh, I found that I was getting traded on ESPN. Like I didn't even, I wasn't given like a proper call, and it's people have a tough time giving that news over the phone or in person. Sometimes it's just easier to send a text or like an Instagram message or something. I don't know. Social media has
Well,
changed
like,
everything.
yeah, I mean, we've compared WWE at length to, something like the NFL. Like WWE, business moves like this really go to show you that, like WWE particularly is like of that same, I guess, mentality almost. Is just, well, WWE is a brand. We could not care less anymore which superstar represents that, as long as they're just wrestlers filling up the show so we can get through, get our profits, get our ad revenue, sponsorship money, etc. So we can get through the shows and we're all good. Because, we went over this with the Braun Strowman thing. He was in the WWE title match and 2 weeks later he was released. And then this Bray Wyatt one where for 8 years you pour resources and funhouse and championships and Fiend attires and different gimmicks and all this stuff into Bray. And now you just give him the axe because, yeah, well, bye. He got back into shape for a return in August, and there were pictures of Bray Wyatt. He looked like he lost about like 20, 30 pounds. He looked much slimmer.
He definitely did.
Go on, bye. Like,
well, let's talk about this side of it. So when you look at Bray Wyatt, what like did you think that he really, like, let's be honest here, Bray Wyatt, did you really think he moved the needle for WWE? Like he's not like a John Cena type of performer. He's not a Brock Lesnar guy. Yeah. So it's like if Bray Wyatt goes to AEW, it's just like, oh, okay, Bray Wyatt's there. Okay, nice. Former WWE guy. There's going to be people that don't want him in AEW just because they don't like anything that the guy stands for. He's not an AEW type guy. Or wherever he goes, New Japan, whatever. There's people that are just not going to like him. They're going to be natural resentment there just based on the style of character that he is. So there's that point of it. But realistically, like, he's not a needle mover for the company. So why, like, 8 years is a long time. That's a long time to be in WWE. You look at like Macho Man Randy Savage, he had like an 8-year run. Shawn Michaels, his run was like realistically 8 years, his second run. People don't stay in WWE for that long. Like, yes, some of the great all-time greats do, because guys like Undertaker, Triple H, John Cena, those guys, they don't come around every so often, so they tend to get more leeway. But guys like Bray Wyatt, and we've seen it with like Dean Ambrose. Seth Rollins is another guy that's he could be indisposable. It's like, there's going to be other guys that are coming up from the indies or wherever that William Regal's out there scouting right now in like an indie show in a garage in front of 25 people. That's going to come in and they're going to take the next spot. Like you said, WWE's just going to put a face there and put him on cups and put him on programs, and that's it. The wheel's going to keep turning.
Yeah, and it makes you also wonder who's next. Because for a while now, like before this year, the sheer concept of
Bobby Lashley is next, pal.
Oh God, Ashley, not Lashley. I don't know how to spell that name. No, legit. Like, you've got these releases. Like before this year, Kevin, if you floated the prospect out, WWE out of the blue just going to just casually release Bray Wyatt, or they're just going to casually release Braun Strowman, I'd be like, okay, just go off the hallucinogenics. Like, just like, what are you doing? Just stop. Just don't need to get that idea out there. But Kevin, now we're in a reality where you've got WWE out of the blue randomly at 2:30 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, just being, oh yeah, bye Bray, released. Like, oh, bye Braun, see ya. Like, who's next? I think AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, I can see it. At this point, nothing's out of the ordinary. Outside of Roman Reigns, I think anyone can go at this point after Bray and Strowman. Seriously speaking.
And that breeds the question, are we on the horizon of seeing a new blood in WWE? Fresh new faces? Because like we said, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, these guys, they're from the same class that Bray Wyatt, they came around in the same time, 2011, 2012, 2013 is when a lot of the talent that came up. Like, you look at some of the guys from that class, they're gone. Rusev is gone. Ambrose is gone. Like, anybody else could go. Like, I think, what do you think? You think we're on the horizon of seeing new talent come in?
No. I literally think all this is Nick Khan going, well, okay, Bray Wyatt, as I said before, Bray Wyatt's making, I don't know how much, Kevin, $850,000 a year, and he hasn't been on TV in 4 months. See ya. I literally think that's what this is. If it's something more and there's a deeper meaning to it, I mean, fair play. I'll admit to being wrong, but at face value, that's what it seems like. And if that's the case, it's so disappointing because I mean, Bray Wyatt especially, considering as we mentioned what he's been through in the past 8-9 months, it's a poor look. It goes to show you WWE's in a headspace mainly through Nick Khan, and I mean, Vince is elderly at this point. It's just at this point anything to make the profit margin look better, anything to I guess push towards a potential sale in the future. Just that's where they're at, Kevin. It's tough to say.
But well, who's gonna be in the main event scene? You look at it. There's like nobody left. You know.
Yeah. Who are your main eventers left, Kevin? I mean, Reigns, I guess
Edge.
Randy Orton's full time still.
Edge,
Sheamus,
Orton. Like, who's there? You know, Bray Wyatt's gone. Braun Strowman's gone.
Kevin, most of these main eventers are the guys from 2003.
Yeah.
Edge, Cena, Orton, and they're like, and how Randy Orton's. He was really young at that time, and Orton's now, 43? Edge is 48 now.
Yeah.
Like, Cena's going to go back to doing movies after SummerSlam. So I guess what does that leave? I mean, you've got Reigns on SmackDown. I guess Rollins is still there. And then what? Like, Lashley, I guess?
McIntyre.
And who's to say that with this track record, WWE in 6 months' time, Nick Khan looks at who's making what and goes, "Oh, Drew McIntyre's making $1.3 million annually. Oh well, I mean he's not bringing in that much as far as revenue, merchandise, ticket sales, Raw ratings. Stuff him. Release Drew McIntyre. Bye. Like who's to say that's not to happen? I mean, At this point, anything's possible.
Exactly. Like at this rate, we're gonna get Bobby Lashley and McIntyre on pay-per-view every month. There's gonna be nobody left. You know, I'm just thinking about it. Like, yeah, if they release McIntyre, that'd be funny. Could you imagine? Like, I think he's one of the guys that could potentially be a game changer in the scope of the wrestling bubble. If they got rid of McIntyre, like that, there's some diehard like McIntyre fans that would probably stop watching wrestling altogether, or just watch wherever McIntyre goes. So they might.
Well, I reckon Bray has near enough that same kind of thing where they're diehard Bray fans. I mean, mainly like see wrestling in that fan base, particularly who see this and go, "I'm genuinely done with WWE. I'm not watching them," because Bray and the prospect of him coming back and the fact that everything Bray's involved in is linked to something in the past or something in the future, like that fan base and a number of substantial numbers going to go, "I'm not going to watch again. How dare you? I'm not going to watch because you got rid of Bray the way you did." Because I mean, Kevin, at the same time, maybe there's some details we don't know. Maybe something else has happened we don't know about with Bray. Maybe he went to them and just out of nowhere had a mood swing today and demanded his release. Well, maybe. I mean, the truth will be heard with Bray, no doubt, down the line. But God, it's a fascinating one.
Once he's on Talk Is Jericho, we'll know everything that happened. That's that's typically how it goes. We're 3 months away from a big Talk Is Jericho episode where Bray Wyatt is venting his feelings about WWE, and he'll be talking about how he was supposed to win the WWE title in like 2015, and Vince changed the plans. We'll get that whole story from Bray Wyatt. It's coming. It's coming.
That'd be fascinating with Bray though, because I mean, that's the best way to describe. I mean, Wyndham Rotunda. He's a fascinating individual. I mean, his career is it's like, I mean, you hear Russo talk about it. It's just like how did they mess up so badly with this guy? Like this could have been. I'm not going to use the phrase next Undertaker because he's completely different. Bray Wyatt's character was not like a dead man, post-mortem. Like Bray Wyatt, he had so much there. He was so young when he came in as well. He came in at like 23 or 24.
Yeah.
Actually, even before that, I think he was in FCW at like 21, which you'd never see nowadays. Nowadays, guys getting to developmental cabinet as like 36, 37. So, yeah, it's what a story.
Well, he could have been in the Undertaker role. That guy that just is a cornerstone for the company that doesn't need the championship. That it's like an honor to feud with them. They have this mystique kind of character. He definitely could have been that guy in that role easily. He could have been someone that has mainstream appeal. You could put on talk shows. He could make appearances at like NBA games and like morning shows. He could have been that guy, but WWE fumbled the ball with him so badly that now it's just he's become just part of the niche product now.
Yeah, because like they put him in main events, but he would legitimately never win. Like this was the whole bit with Bray Wyatt. It was like, he'd come out, he'd do his same spiel every time. Oh, I'm scary. Oh, follow the buzzards. Oh, the whole world's in your hands, John. Oh, you do the cryptic promos, that same style. He'd come out there, the arena would be pitch black, fans would be waving like the torch lights on their iPhones. That would be what would happen. And then Bray would get in the ring and just lose. Mm-hmm. Every big match he'd be in, he'd lose outside of like a very rare select few, which he'd win because of interference from like Luke Harper. And like that's not a sustainable formula for a main event guy. So in that regard, Kevin, when you look at Bray's booking over the years, they never viewed him as like a true, like, you're on a main event echelon tier. Bray was always that tier below in WWE's eyes. Just besides the fact his merch was like the top seller for like a year, I believe, something like that. Just who knows?
Yeah, confusing because he could have been a merchandise cash cow, and he was even as the Fiend, but he could have been for his entire run. But it's just sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles for a lot of these guys. And another aspect too is just weird that the entire Wyatt family now, they were all released. You look at it, insane. The late Brody Lee was released, Eric Rowan, Braun Strowman, and now Bray Wyatt. If you would have told me in 2013 that the Wyatt family were going to be released like 6 years later when they debuted, I wouldn't have believed it. I would have been like, nah, it can't be, nah. Why would they release these guys? When they first debuted, it was such a breath of fresh air because we were watching like for so many years from like I was watching at least for 4 to 5 years, 6 years with like Sheamus and Muppets and Chris Jericho doing like Family Feud or whatever the guy's name is, the host of Jeopardy, Bob Barker, stuff like that. I'm watching this like you've got the actor from Arrow punching Cody Rhodes in the face. Like this is the stuff that I'm watching, just cheesy, trying to like cross over to other fan bases that feature primarily kids and families. And then now you see this like cryptic, different, unique set of characters in the Wyatt family. And I was like, yeah, they're lifers. Like that's it. WWE, they got a hit with them. But it was anything but that. It was like snake bit from the beginning with those guys.
Oh, it's so weird. Like I vividly remember watching like every week when those vignettes were airing for them. And it was so different. Like, I mean, to be specific, in 2013, it was Cena getting booed everywhere, and it was Cena versus Ryback for the title. There were part-times everywhere. Punk had taken another hiatus, and there was pretty much nothing. And come like May, you get these like Wyatt family vignettes. You got these 3 creepy dudes, 2 like giants and Harper and Rowan, and then Bray Wyatt, who looks so distinctive, sitting in some outhouse in the forest, swinging on a rocking chair with a lantern, and it was so unique. And to think that now, 8 years later, near enough, like it's bang on 8 years later. I mean, if you explain to me as a 10-year-old in 2013, in 8 years' time, you see Luke Harper, like he won't, unfortunately, he won't be with us anymore. Eric Rowan will be pretty much not wrestling anymore, doing like indie gigs as Redbeard, and Bray Wyatt will be just randomly released by WWE for near enough no apparent reason, budget cuts apparently. Like it's hard to fathom. It's just insane, Kevin.
It really is. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add on the Bray Wyatt situation, or anything else in general before we get out of here?
I just look forward to that Talk is Jericho shoot interview in about 2.5 months' time, and you got Bray Wyatt talking about how Bruce Pritchard shut down his idea to beat Goldberg in a creative meeting, and Bray was never the same, and it's gonna be fascinating listening. But yeah, anything else from you?
No, that's it. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of the podcast. We just had to record this like after we recorded the Elite Heat, so yeah, this will just kind of open the show, and then now back to the regularly scheduled program there, John.
Yeah, back to our previous intro. So roll it. Ladies and gentlemen, Elite Heat, episode 32. This week, we were going to do the Cena bio, part 2, where we're going to talk about from 2015 through to current day, Cena's legacy, his achievements, accolades, what have you. But a number of things are happening in wrestling at the moment. We're on the build to SummerSlam, the build to All Out. There are rumors aplenty about CM Punk and I guess we call him Bryan Danielson now. There are rumors about them going AEW. There's news stories left, right, and center. Vince McMahon making comments about AEW. You've got Finn Balor interjecting himself in Cena vs. Reigns in the main event of SummerSlam. Kevin, a lot's happening. So, what can you talk about today?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, I guess we're gonna do like a news roundup, if you will. Even though I really don't really like doing these kind of podcasts generally because they're not so exciting. But this week's topics, especially, they feel like something that I think a lot of people are interested in, and I think a lot of people will want to hear our thoughts about. Maybe that's just us being egomaniacs, but I think some people would like to hear our collective thoughts on these topics. Namely, like you said, Daniel Bryan, Punk, and the SmackDown Road to SummerSlam. Other than that,
Yes.
what else are we going to talk about? Is there anything else? Like, I guess we could talk about the possibility of All Out and SummerSlam taking place in front of empty arenas again. Other than that, is there any other big news that you want to discuss or any talking points?
Well, I reckon the show is going to be like you're looking probably an hour long show. It's going to be a lot about just this Bryan and Punk thing, and them being draws and their impact in AEW and the rumors and all that kind of stuff. That's going to be like the main portion of this. I'm going to have a rant about the whole Finn Balor interjecting himself in the SummerSlam main event. I have a big spiel about that. And yeah, just general rumors talk. Bit of a chill podcast this week because we're saving the Cena part 2 for next week. So yeah, it's going to be decent show. So Kevin, without further ado, do you want to just get into the Punk and Danielson rumors / story, pal?
Yeah, I guess that's the right place to start. Why not? We're recording this on Friday, the 30th. So the July 28th edition of Dynamite featured multiple CM Punk references, pal. Are you privy to this? Did you see any of said references to the one best in the world?
Many people call themselves the best in the world. Oh, CM Punk! Yes, Kevin, I saw, saw a number of Punk references, most notably the Darby Allin one. In a backstage interview with Alex Malvez in the Boiler Room, I saw that one. But yeah, Kevin, I think we'll cut to the chase now. You can discuss the rumors and the stories throughout the next however many minutes to talk about this. But do you really think CM Punk is going to show up on AEW? And if so, do you think he'll do anything?
I think at this point, I think he really is going to show up. I'm tentative to say that he is 100%, that I believe it 100%, just because it's CM Punk and we've had these rumors for years and years. He was supposed to be at All Out 2019, right? And then he was supposed to be at some other show in 2020. I forgot which one. And he was supposed to come back to WWE for the past 6 years. Realistically, what has CM Punk done? Okay, he had a couple UFC fights. He got beat up. He gave an inspirational speech to Joe Rogan. And then he got roasted by Joe Rogan a number of years after that fight. So it's just the rumors have been there. A long way of saying this. The rumors have been there for years and years. And I'll believe it when I see it. When I see CM Punk come out on TV, whether it's on Dynamite, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Ring of Honor, or some other indie fed, then I'll say, wow, okay, CM Punk is here. Until then, I'm not even going to acknowledge it. What about you? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm much the same in that regard when it comes to CM Punk. It's like, I don't need to explain to the loyal Late Heat listeners that when I was growing up, Punk was my favorite wrestler. But because of what's happened really since, most notably the UFC stuff, through my teenage years, seeing just YouTube recommended videos, which it's like Joe Rogan, blast CM Punk, calls him an embarrassment to UFC, that type of stuff. That makes me care less and less. Then you see CM Punk going on WWE backstage. That whole stint made me even less interested because when Punk went on backstage that first time, it was like, oh my God, WWE backstage, this is where it's at. And then within 3 weeks, no one cared. So there was that. Now there's even more rumors, more speculation. We're used to it with Punk. We really are. At this point, Kevin, if he shows up, awesome. I'm going to actually be more, willing to watch the AEW shows because there'll be a CM Punk segment that I'll be, really interested in seeing. So in that regard, I guess it'll work because a not fully balls deep AEW fan, if Punk shows up, will want to watch AEW. So in that regard, if Punk comes in, it'll be a big success in that regard. But really, just Kevin, I'll believe it when I see it, much like you. And yeah, wow.
Yeah, so let me give you the 3 Punk references for this week's Dynamite. So Darby Allin said, "I'll be in Chicago. You know, I've been around a lot of men in this world that have laid claim to how they're the greatest. There's only one place to really prove that, right here in AEW, even if you think you are the best in the world." So that sent the internet into a frenzy. Like, people are like, "Oh my god, CM Punk's gonna feud with Darby Allin. I need CM Punk versus Darby Allin. I didn't know I needed this match." And I like CM Punk. I like Darby Allin. But you put those
But
two
why?
right, but why?
Why?
It's like you put those two together on a television program. I guess it could be good. Like, well, what are the promos gonna be? "Oh, Darby, I heard you say that if this was the place to be the best, it's AEW." Like, okay, like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? Do you want to see
Well,
Punk and
Kevin,
Darby?
This is one of these things which, I mean, Smartbusters talked about this in their video when it comes to Punk and Bryan, but it's a damn good point. When Kenny Omega goes on an interview with Dave Meltzer for Wrestling Observer, and Omega's just praising Bryan and Punk, saying how great they are, how he loved to work with them in the ring, how he's such a big fan of their work. Like, stuff like that really does kill my investment in this. Because, yes, everyone knows wrestling isn't quote unquote real, but at least try and make it seem somewhat like there's some beef there. Why doesn't Kenny Omega go on Meltzer's show and say, "I'm better than Daniel Bryan ever was. I'm a better wrestler than he is. CM Punk's overrated. He's going to come to AEW. I'm going to beat him in the ring in a 50-minute match." Why not do that, Kevin? So there's something. But as you allude to there, what's it going to be? It's going to be CM Punk showing up, which, I mean, that'd be cool. But then it'll be like, okay, Darby, I can still go in the ring. Despite the fact that I'm like 43, I can still wrestle in this ring, bell to bell. I'm going to show you what's up. You're not as good as you think you are. I'm going to beat you one-on-one in this ring. And AW fans are like, yeah! Violence! And it's like, okay, like,
Yeah, exactly. And then in the I guess was the opener of Dynamite, we had the Elite, and then it was the Elite versus Hangman Page and Dark Order. Yeah, you've got the
yes.
Elite dressed up as Looney Tunes. What do they call themselves? The Elite Squad. They're wearing like
Yeah, the Tune Squad from Space Jam, yeah.
yeah, they got the
Yeah.
Space Jam outfits on. And it's like, wow, okay, AEW's trying to be topical. That's cool. Not what I tune into wrestling.
I also want to mention with that, like, you open AW Dynamite, and like I see, like, this is one of these things, like, wrestling, you promote other things, like, oh, good, this has been happening forever. And like, you open the show with your AW World Champion and your tag team champions and the biggest, I guess, faction in the company coming out there. You've got Nick Jackson attempting to dunk on like a 7-foot hoop and like falling over, and it's like, oh, okay.
Wow. You've got a 38-year-old man who looks like Brian Pillman and Dean Ambrose from 2016 had a baby, with a headband on, in a Looney Tunes shirt, holding a basketball. That's what we saw on Wednesday night. A lovely July 28th Wednesday night. A lovely evening. We have to watch that. I don't even know. What is there to say?
Well, like, it's like, and people listening, we're not trying to blast AW because they did a bit of cross promotion of a Space Jam. It's just that the reception to that. I went on Twitter because I was on my lunch break at work, like near enough at the time this was happening, because like Australian time zones and whatnot. It was like middle of a Thursday. I'm like scrolling through, and like there's like a bunch of different people on the timeline saying how they love this crossover. The Elite are nailing this. This is an amazing way to start Dynamite. I'm watching the video, and you got Kenny Omega botching dribbling a basketball. I'm like, oh, okay. This is taking over. This is taking over Wednesday nights, pal. This is the future of wrestling. Like. Yeah. So it's just the little stuff with this. It's just the little like, I forget the word, but it's just a little tendencies these AW. Yeah.
So
nuances. Yeah.
The point being in bringing this up is Nick Jackson did a high knee into a corner, and then he did a bulldog, one of CM Punk's signature moves. If this was anyone but the Young Bucks, I would look into this a little bit deeper. But because it's Nick Jackson, I just look at it as trolling, and I don't really care. But people are freaking out, like, oh my god, he's doing CM Punk's move on TV. Oh my god.
Yeah. Kevin, I know we're supposed to be a podcast and talk about this, but I have legitimately nothing to add on that. It's a 38-year-old man from Rancho Cucamonga hitting a bulldog. Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Next.
And then
thank you, next. Move on.
Then the last one is MJF. He says, I'm going to read the quote that MJF said, and apparently this is a Punk reference. I'm going to read you the quote and see if you understand the reference. Because I had to read it like 4 times to get it. So MJF, after the main event where we saw a 51-year-old Chris Jericho getting beat up by a deathmatch indie wrestler, MJF grabbed the mic It said, quote, Chris, as you sit there in more pain than you've ever been in your life, I want you to listen to me.
The thing with that, why I'm laughing, is because the reaction to that, I saw. I didn't say like what he said, but I saw people on the timeline saying epic long-term storytelling. That pipe bomb reference though, OMG, AW long-term storytelling, and it's MJF reciting a pipe bomb line. Like,
Wow.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so they made 3 CM Punk references. If CM Punk was going to if he's actually going to show up in AEW, the point here being AEW has already beat a dead horse. So when Punk shows up, it's gonna be like, oh wow, okay. We've known for like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, however long it'll be at the time whenever he shows up.
Kevin, dirt sheets, like it just like if Punk was ever going to come back, the inner like 8-year-old me, this little Australian kid watching CM Punk, be like, oh my god, he's really good. If I knew he was going to come back, I would want it to be similar to, I don't know, just I don't even know who's similar to, just something to where it's surprising. There's some shock factor there. Now, when CM Punk shows up for Rampage in Chicago, or CM Punk's music hits it all out, obviously the people in attendance will go crazy, but this has been legitimately at this point spoiled for, it's going to be upwards of a month by the time it happens. Like, Kevin, I don't know.
That was the next thing I was going
to.
That was the next thing I was going to ask you. What do you think about the idea that CM Punk shows up at AEW's B show Rampage? And yes, I know they're running Rampage at like a 15 or 18,000 seat arena in Chicago. I get that. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be a Friday night show on whatever, on TNT or TBS. And it's still their B show regardless.
Kevin, this is buddy CM Punk, the supposed savior of the PG era, the voice of the voiceless, the man who he cut the most, I guess, real anti-Cena promo we ever heard. This is this guy, and you're telling me that Rampage, this AW show that bridges the gap between Dynamite and AW Dark Elevation, is going to be the beginning of Punk's AW debut. It's like it's a little thing. I'm not going to scream and shout about it, but it's just like, if you're going to bring in CM Punk, ideally it's a surprise, and ideally it's like at the end of some big match, like the main event of All Out or something. You know, it's just common sense. But I guess, I don't know, you've got to market something for this Rampage show, I guess. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, if CM Punk shows up at Rampage, I made this comment on Twitter. I immediately think of Bret Hart. We know Eric Bischoff said Bret Hart was brought into WCW to be the face of Thunder, to bring publicity to the second show. You bring CM Punk in and you stick him on the second show as like the big name, right? And it's like, okay, we're gonna have Punk on here with a bunch of young guys. This will basically be an episode of AEW Dark, and then oh look, we're gonna have Punk make his debut. Punk will confront whoever, Cody Rhodes, Darby Allin, whoever it is. My money would be on Cody Rhodes.
God forbid. Do we need another Cody Rhodes story? Like, what does Cody have to do with any of these people? What does Cody have to do with Malachi Black? What does Cody have to do with Phil Brooks? Oh, till 10 years ago backstage, you nudged me and said, hey kid, you're not getting a push. I am. Therefore, 10 years later in AEW, when they're having a blood feud and Cody's bleeding and crying in the middle of the ring in the main event of a pay-per-view, therefore it makes sense, Kevin. You know, like...
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, exactly. And I think his run in AEW, I don't want to say it would be snake bit, because that's still a bit too strong, but it wouldn't be off on a proper foot if you start him at Rampage. Like I think a big debut at All Out, have him attack Kenny Omega, that's pretty good. Or you have him come out as like a surprise, maybe. You do it at a show where nobody is expecting it. Like everybody is expecting him to show up in Chicago. Why not have him debut at somewhere other than Chicago, maybe? That's an idea, just kind of throwing that one out there.
Yeah, like, I mean, one thing I suggested, way back when I did that What If CM Punk Joins AEW video, from memory, it was something involved, it was like MJF in like some main event match, and then Punk gets involved, and like randomly, there's this big shocking moment, cult of personality hits, crowd goes crazy, no one expects it, and he confronts like MJF in the middle of the ring or something like that. But instead, watch them. I mean, we haven't seen this yet, but watch it be the case where guys, we're live for AW Rampage. We got 13,000 people in United Center. Oh my god! And then they have Punk's music, and Punk comes out. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
this, like,
yeah. Punk comes
yeah.
out because a 20-second promo, and then he's
Mm.
like, yeah, then he's just like, I'm the best of the world, and somebody cuts him off. Easily, I could see that.
Yeah, like he goes WWE, isn't the A show. AEW is where it's at now. And then the crowd's like, yeah, AEW. Like, that's probably what's gonna happen as well. Like,
what would be your three best matchups for Punk amongst his AEW debut? Like, who are the three guys that you feel like he could work the best with?
as far as a story or as far as in the ring, because they're completely different.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I'd say as a story.
the story is what matters more. So MJF's the main one because MJF grew up idolizing Punk. I think that one just makes too much sense. I think Punk and Jericho, you pretty much have to run that back in AEW. And as far as the next one, I guess if Bryan Danielson's there, then maybe him, but that's legit it. Because, like, how are you supposed to sell me on Punk and Omega when Omega was literally just praising Punk for 15 minutes on a Dave Meltzer interview a week ago? What merit am I supposed to care? I don't know.
Well, the way the Elite operates, the build up for a Punk Omega feud would be Punk showing up on BTE and making corny WWE jokes.
Like CM Punk showing up with a shot, like you have like Matt Jackson. There's some skit in the Jackson's backyard. You got like Matt Jackson scooping up dirt, and Punk goes, "Hey, you got a shovel? That's just like what Triple H has all the time." And then they'll be like, "WWE shots, Triple H buried Booker T at WrestleMania 19."
Basically. And then somehow Kenny Omega will hear that and be like, "Oh, guys, we were told we need to stop burying WWE." The people on Twitter said that, and then Punk will just be like, "Oh, who cares what they say on Twitter? Who care what the marks say?" And then I guess that's how Omega and Punk, something like that, it would be the crux of an Omega Punk feud.
You're a mark, bro. You're a mark, bro. Like, Jesus Christ. Kevin, the whole Punk thing, I will say, compared to Bryan Danielson, I'm much more excited for CM Punk. Out of the two of them.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because,
Let's do the Bryan thing now. Go ahead.
yeah. So the other big name that has been thrown around and at this point basically spoiled to death online at this point is our favorite WrestleMania 37 main eventer, Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan to AEW is now heavily rumored, if not spoiled. These people saying he's already signed the contract. He's going to debut imminently with AEW. And this one, I just don't get, Kevin, because to me at least, you've got a guy who. Let me do a quick Google search as far as Daniel Bryan's age. So you've got a 40-year-old man who his neck is being held together by a piece of string. Okay, he's had numerous serious injuries in his career, and you want him to go to AEW, a promotion where the whole premise is everyone get your stuff in, get your spots in. There's no real regard for safety. I mean, just look at what Matt Hardy nearly died live on pay-per-view. And you want Daniel Bryan to go there, Kevin, or these people do, and put on really good matches with, oh my god, I want to see Bryan versus Kenta Kobashi in an AEW ring. I want to see Bryan versus this guy. I want to see Bryan versus Lance Archer, and I want to see Daniel Bryan versus Ricky Starks. It's like, why? Just calm down. Daniel Bryan's neck's being held together by a piece of string, Kevin. I mean, what do you think before I keep going?
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't really get the intrigue for Daniel Bryan in AEW. I don't really get the intrigue with Daniel Bryan at this point in his career in general. He's 40 years old now. He's literally done it all in the wrestling business. He's wrestled the entire AEW roster. Before there was an AEW like 15 years ago, he wrestled them on Ring of Honor shows, PWG shows, numerous indie shows, Dragon Gate. He's already wrestled legitimately like everybody on the roster aside from like the young guys like Darby Allin and MJF and Sammy Guevara and those guys. You look at AEW's top talent, Chris Jericho. He's wrestled Chris Jericho. He's wrestled Moxley. He's wrestled Punk. If assuming Punk goes there. He's wrestled Omega countless times. He's wrestled the Young Bucks. He's wrestled literally everybody. So I don't really understand the intrigue. Like what's going to happen in 2021, Daniel Bryan? The Yes Movement's not really a thing anymore. He's just kind of a guy that has good matches. Like if this was 2016 and AEW brought in Daniel Bryan, like if there was an alternative In 2016, we know Daniel Bryan would have gone. He would have found a way to get out of his WWE contract. He's been on record saying this, that he would have wrestled anywhere, even though he was, severely injured. He's going to show up, and then what? Like, 2016 Daniel Bryan would show up. It would be a big deal. It'd be like, oh my god, this is Daniel Bryan. It's a pretty big star. But we're 7 years removed from him being a star. He hasn't really done anything. Like, yeah, he had the Planet's Champion run, but aside from that, his entire second half of his career post WrestleMania 30, it's been lackluster, in my opinion. So now,
yeah, and then when you tweeted, Kevin, Daniel Bryan is not a draw, and the response is, well, Daniel Bryan isn't, but Bryan Danielson is. I was like, excuse me, what?
yes.
Because Bryan's a 23-year-old in Ring of Honor having matches with Roderick Strong, which go for 65 minutes. And the only way you can view it is tape trading with a bunch of neckbeards. Like, the only way you can view those matches is that. Because Bryan Danielson was a draw 17 years ago when he was 23, coming out the final countdown, kicking wrestlers in the head for real. Because he was supposedly a massive draw then and made Ring of Honor a legitimate mainstream alternative then. Now, we'll forget the WWE stuff where he's closing WrestleMania 30, doing a yes chant in front of 75,000 people crying with Conor the Crusher. Forget the Daniel Bryan stuff, Kevin. Because he was wrestling 74-minute matches with Nigel McGuinness and ROH in front of 45 neckbeards in 2005, that's what matters, Kevin. So now, in 2021, when a 40-year-old man with a neck that's held together by a piece of string shows up, Kevin, that's Bryan Danielson. That's the American Dragon. That's a draw, pal.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
Oh,
it is remarkable. I had somebody tell me that yes, Bryan Danielson is Daniel Bryan is not a draw. Bryan Danielson is a draw. And I was
on what metric? How?
And I was like, what does that even mean? Bryan Danielson? Like, literally nobody on this earth knows who Bryan Danielson is, aside from maybe 500,000 people know that Daniel Bryan at one point in his life went by his real name, Bryan Danielson, in Ring of Honor. I had people tell me, I had this person tell me, oh, but he is a draw. Okay, my response to the person that said Bryan Danielson was a draw, I go, okay, yeah, he's such a draw. He put Ring of Honor on the map in the 2000s. And I was being sarcastic. Because obviously, nobody knows what Ring of Honor is. Nobody will ever know what Ring of Honor is. And I think some people thought I was being serious. So somebody responded, it was like, he literally did, though. And I was like,
did he now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, yeah, if you put them on the map, people would know what they are. Like, people would know them by now. If you put them on the map, everybody would know Ring of Honor. And I was like, well, then there's someone else was like, well, we're 13 years past him being in Ring of Honor, so they're not going to be on the map because he's not there anymore. And my response was, well, WWE's still living off of the fame that Stone Cold Steve Austin had and brought to their company in 1998. If Daniel Bryan was such a big draw, Ring of Honor would be living off of that fame. But no, Ring of Honor is at their lowest point. Literally nobody watches Ring of Honor anymore. AEW took all their talent and basically took their market, swooped in and did what they didn't want to do and went national. So now people are trying to tell me that Bryan Danielson's a draw for Ring of Honor. He helped elevate Ring of Honor. No, first of all, if you want to say that Ring of Honor, if you want to say Ring of Honor was elevated, people that elevated Ring of Honor would be CM Punk, Samoa Joe, and probably Austin Aries, maybe some other guys that I'm missing. They took Ring of Honor from being in garages to a touring brand that will go into cities and smaller arenas and cities around the country of the United States and then do some tours in England. Bryan Danielson had nothing to do with that. He was
well, okay. I mean, Bryan had the same impact with that as just the other guys. Bryan Danielson didn't do exponentially amazing things for ROH and expand the brand so far. Punk and Samoa Joe did as much for ROH as Bryan did, as a touring brand. And people make it seem oh my god, but you wait, Bryan Danielson is a draw. Bryan Danielson was a thing because he was an athletic guy 16, 17 years ago having 90-minute long matches with Roderick Strong and Nigel McGuinness, where they're throwing each other on their necks, where they're hitting legitimate shoot moves, they're bleeding in the middle of the ring in front of 40 people. That's what this whole Bryan Danielson thing is. And what do people want to see from that Bryan Danielson character nowadays? You want to see a 35-minute match on AEW Dark Elevation where you've got Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan wearing trunks saying the Dragon as he's kicking Andrade El Idolo in the head over and over again. Andrade's bleeding and and you got Dave Meltzer giving it 4.75 stars in his newsletter a week later. Like, Kevin, like, look at the, like, I want people to look at the reality of the situation. What Daniel Bryan in AEW will be. It'll be a 40-year-old man saying, I can out-wrestle everyone. I was a dragon 17 years ago having 75-minute shoot matches in ROH and PWG. I can wrestle really well. And that's all it's going to be. I don't see how it's going to be anything else. And, Kevin, you go. Say something.
Yeah, this is where I start to feel like I'm just so disconnected from AEW in general. It's like, it's just not for me. Because the reality of the situation is when Daniel Bryan shows up on Dynamite in whatever, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, whenever it is, post All Out, 2 months from now, whenever the hell he shows up, he's going to come out, he's going to get the yes chance, they're going to be like, oh, Daniel Bryan, this is awesome. He's going to cut a promo pandering to the crowd. Oh, it's great to breathe fresh air. I have creative freedom now. I couldn't do these things. I had chains on me. He's going to say stuff like that to pop the crowd. It's going to be big. It'll be 2, 3 weeks of that. Daniel Bryan pondering to the crowd. And then what? 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks from now? From that point, we'll have just Daniel Bryan versus, like you said, Andrade El Idolo will be tweeted out on a Friday night by Tony Khan. They're going to tweet out a match graphic. It'll be Daniel Bryan, Andrade El Idolo. They're going to headline AEW Dark. And then what? From there. It's just going to be people freaking out. Oh my God, AEW Dark is stacked this week. And then we're going to get Daniel Bryan and 2 random tag team partners like Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. They're going to face Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. So and then it's like, oh my God, stacked match. Like, it's just, that's not really for me. That's not why I watch wrestling.
Do you I want to build on that, because I think that whole point needs a discussion. Like, I'm not going to try and say, or even throw the case out there that AEW and their fans are delusional. I'm not going to say that, but I'm going to say that I don't think the mentality for watching AEW is not something we have clearly. Like, we're not going to we never see bona fide hate on Twitter tweeting out the 4 matches that AEW has announced their Dynamite, saying, OMG, stacked, bro, 4 fire emojis, LFG. That's, I don't see it. And, you've got people who are it's like, oh my God, Bryan Danielson versus Andrade El Idolo. I didn't know I need this till right now. It's like, it's 2 grown men who are getting paid to, I guess, wrestle having a match. Exactly. How many matches have you seen? What are they going to do that you haven't seen before? And I guess that's kind of the place I'm at with just wrestling generally. Well, I hardly just ever watch matches anymore because I feel like I've seen them all. I feel like I've seen everything. And I get, nowadays, when there's the big storylines, the big matches, the fresh matchups, the dream matches, Reigns, Edge, Reigns, Cena, what have you, I care more because of the stars. But when it's just AEW, Kevin, well, I personally think, I'll throw you in a moment on this one, it's like, oh, what a dream match. I get to see Jungle Boy versus Darby Allin. It's like, what?
What a dream match, pal.
Who's I get, there are people out there, because we've seen this on Twitter. I mean, we've both been on Twitter a bit too much in the past year, I think it's fair to say, but we've seen this ad nauseum. You got, AEW people on Twitter being like, oh my God, this is the match I need. And it makes it seem like these people are legitimately fantasizing about these matches. You got notebooks and they're writing down every possible dream match combination, being like, oh my God, I'd love to see the Lucha Bros and Jungle Boy versus Park and Luchasaurus and Colt Cabana. Oh my God, that'd be an amazing match. And it's just, I don't think that it's for me, AEW, in that sense. I'm not that way. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it's for me either. I've realized, I've come to that realization probably about a year in to AEW when they did the Jericho Cassidy feud. That was kind of when I realized, maybe this isn't for me. It's just, not my taste, not what I'm into. But
sorry, real quick. That doesn't mean we hate AEW. Doesn't mean we hate people who enjoy it. That's not at all what we're saying. It's just the mentality of being a bit disconnected from reality and loving every AEW match and saying everything's a dream match, everything's stacked, and every card's amazing, and that Tony Khan's Jesus. It's just not a mentality that we have. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just what we think. Kevin, go on.
Yeah, I don't judge you. If you're one of those people that tweets out AEW's match cards and you're just like, oh my God, I can't wait to see Jungle Boy versus Sammy Guevara. That's a dream match that I've been waiting my whole life to see. If you're one of those people that does that, I'm not judging you, not telling you it's wrong. That's just simply not what I'm into. If anything, it turns me off from the product. the way the fan base is. Maybe if I stepped away from Twitter for a while and I just watched AEW every week and didn't look at Twitter or Facebook or the internet at all, maybe I could enjoy it. Maybe I should try that. Maybe I should try taking a break from Twitter for a while and just watching AEW.
But I think that's legit. I think when it comes to AEW, this is just anything. Like a personal experience. When I watched Fast 9, I just went in there, watched it for 2 hours, genuinely really enjoyed it, had a great time. I was like, I really enjoyed the movie. And then you go on Twitter, you go online, negativity. This movie sucked. Cena's acting wasn't very good. The sixth one was better. So this one, and it's just like, well, I enjoyed it. Is something wrong with me? You know, like I liked it, and you know, like
right, exactly. But the only problem with AEW is you can't just watch the show blindly. You have to follow social media. You have to follow their YouTube or their Facebook page or something, because so much of their show is enshrined into their social media platforms. You know, so it's like, I mean, maybe I could try it. I'll try that experiment. Just stay off of Twitter for a while. But just try to watch AEW every single week. But
maybe that'll help, as you allude to there. How's it going to help you know who? I mean, Nick Gage is an example. Like, if you're not hardcore on the internet, hardcore on Twitter, actively strolling the timeline 3 hours a day, looking out for Nick Gage, Matt Cardona, GCW deathmatch highlights, if you're not doing that, how are you going to know or care when Nick Gage shows up on TV and he's slicing Jericho with a pizza cutter? You know, like,
that's too funny. Pizza cutter. But what I want to talk about more so, really the meat and the potatoes of what I want to talk about with this podcast is the impact, the potential impact that CM Punk and Daniel Bryan are going to have on AEW.
Right.
That's like where I think a lot of people get delusional. They're like, I just have to be honest. Like, I'm not trying to insult nobody, but I think people are just delusional. Like, people think that CM Punk and Daniel Bryan is gonna draw AEW's ratings like past 2 million. They're gonna go past Raw. They're gonna be beating SmackDown. That's just not the case. Like, maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. AEW would do 1.5 million ratings with Punk and Bryan. But then it's going to hit that wall where we're going to be at a point where it's like, oh, wait, Punk is going to be in a random 6-man tag match. We're going to get Punk and the Lucha Bros versus MJF and who knows, somebody else, whatever.
Yeah.
We're going to get that point, and that wall is going to come. But I will say this. I do think Punk and Bryan, they're going to take AEW to the next level, whatever that next level is. Like, I think with Punk and Bryan, they'll do 1 million every week consistently, unless they get moved because of like some situation, because of the playoffs or something else. But I think from going forward, I think they could at least crack 1 million with those two guys enshrined on the TV. It all goes based on how they use them. If they use them properly, the ceiling is just endless for the company. But like I said, it's gonna be like when Christian Cage came in. Now what is he doing? Just random matches that really don't matter. He's not in a main event scene or anything like that. If they bring Punk and Bryan in and they have, they do Bryan versus Omega off rip, they do Punk and MJF and these great promo battles, a great story. AEW, they could really go to the next level. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, for sure. As long as they don't do with Bryan and Punk what they did with Sting, I think that then you're in a good place. Because what they did with Sting, it's like awesome, memorable debut, and I no doubt when they have, I mean, kind of contrary to what I alluded to earlier, but like the moment when Punk first shows up on AEW TV, whether that's Rampage, All Out, Dynamite, what have you, that'll be cool. And I guess the same with Bryan, maybe, I don't know, probably to a lesser extent. But then after that initial first appearance, debut, what have you, what I worry about is, for instance, with Daniel Bryan, you'll have like the Bryan Danielson Open Challenge, and it'll be every week on AEW Rampage, you'll have Daniel Bryan main eventing, having a really good 15-minute match versus Butcher, or Daniel Bryan having a great 15-minute match with Blade, or Daniel Bryan having a really good match with Angelico. And it's like, well, why? Like, he's a 40-year-old man wrestling these good matches. Like, what's the point? And then with CM Punk, it's like, are they going to have CM Punk do an interview with Tony Schiavone every week? We're going to have a different sit-down interview with CM Punk where he says, my time in WWE, they misused me. I should have main evented WrestleMania, even though numbers say that you really shouldn't have. I should have been in the main event. I was screwed by Vince McMahon. I'm here in AEW to send a message, as I'm a 43-year-old man who's had 2 failed UFC fights and I've fallen off a cliff since. Like, this is the thing, Kevin. this is the thing. It's the aftermath because the initial moment will probably be cool, especially for Punk. But then what? And how will that influence viewership, numbers, ratings? I think there'll be a boost, especially for the first like month or two they're there. But where that has them in come December, waits to be seen. It really does.
And people online will have you thinking that these two guys are megastars, though. Like you look at that video that you did, the video about the Summer of Punk, where you pretty much
Yep.
debunked this whole idea that CM Punk was a megastar, he was a superstar. I'm glad that you made that video, but for people, but like I'm not trying. I'm like I don't want you to take this the wrong way. What I'm gonna say because I don't mean it as negative, but for people
Yep.
that look at it, people that are able to step back and then look at what the Summer of Punk was, it's no surprise that ratings went down. What happened after the pipe bomb? You had Punk,
Nothing.
you had Triple H and Kevin Nash cutting promos with Punk interrupting them and be like, "Hey, I'm here, guys. I'm the star. Everybody watch it. Everybody comes to see me, guys." And and what? You had R-Truth running around. You have Sheamus and Muppets. Like what did you expect? There was nothing going on in the show. Like yeah, if you had Brock Lesnar around at the time, Rock coming back, like if the pipe bomb and all that happened in the summer of 2011 with a bunch of these guys around, yeah, the Summer of Punk could have been something. But CM Punk alone as a top guy is not going to be a draw. And AEW supporting cast is not good enough around him. You have like the greats, the people that are draws in wrestling: Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold, John Cena, The Rock. Those are what the four biggest draws. Then you could plug in guys like Brock Lesnar at 5, Triple H around there.
All time or now?
All
All
time,
time or now?
all time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like
Okay.
the point
Yeah.
being is Stone Cold. He's arguably the biggest draw in wrestling history. I don't even think it's close at this point. Stone Cold made everybody on the roster around him better. Stone like D'Lo Brown was great. He looked like the best wrestler in the world on a card where Stone Cold was on it. The Rock, he cut it in promos with Stone Cold. He brought the best out. The supporting cast elevated. They saw how hard Austin was working and how over Austin was. They were like, "Oh, I want to be like that guy. I want to be that popular. I want my T-shirt to sell. I want to work hard because he's working hard." That's not going to happen in AEW. It's just not going to be the case. Am I right?
Yeah, and I mean that boils down to two things. It's the writing is a big one. You mentioned Summer Punk there. The writing for Summer Punk was like horrid. It really was. How that got handled, I don't think you could have really handled it much worse outside that Money in the Bank like night in Chicago. So yeah, that's partly with the Summer of Punk, but just generally those Summer Punk numbers prove that Punk wasn't it. Like I've got it right in front of me. I'll just real quickly run over a couple of these. Like you look at May of 2011 when the best thing on the show is R-Truth versus Cena. You got Miz feuding with Alex Riley, Punk versus Mysterio. You got Evan Bourne versus Jack Swagger every week on Raw. These shows are drawing 5.2 million. Just like how many viewers? 5.3. The Macho Man tribute show drew 5.5 million. Like those are the numbers in May. Fast forward 2 months, Kevin, when CM Punk is the biggest thing on the show. He's cut the pipe bomb. A couple of weeks after the pipe bomb, Money in the Bank, Cena's involved, WWE title. And what numbers are they drawing? 4.4 million, 4.7, 4.6 million. Like it's just what this is the time period, Kevin, where Punk was the guy. The spotlight was on him. Punk was the biggest star. He cut the pipe bomb. All eyes are on Phil Brooks. And numbers went down by about 10%. Yeah. So do with that what you will. Nowadays with AEW, yeah, there'll be a little bump up. But how long will the bump stay? How big will the bump be? Are people saying the bump will be like several 100,000 viewers? You think in the day and age of social media that we're going to have upwards of 2 million people watching AEW live legally on TNT just because Phil Brooks at 43 is going to cut a 2-minute fake shoot promo about Vince McMahon holding him down 8 years ago? You think 600,000 people are going to finally tune into AEW to watch that?
Yeah,
really?
The ship has sailed on Punk coming back. Like it's just, I feel like it's a little too late. Yeah, it's nice. He can collect a check. He's gonna have a couple good matches. It'll be nice to see him back. But the hype is just dead for a lot of people. It's been too long. You know, he made people wait way too long, in my opinion. I find the whole they call it like I find the whole narrative that Punk is a draw. It's just silly. Like who are these disenfranchised fans of wrestling that are gonna be like, oh my god, CM Punk is back. Oh my god, I have to watch now. Where are these fans? Like, who are these fans that Punk has? These legions and legions of fans. Like, yeah, maybe a couple 100,000, maybe 200,000 people would be like, "Oh, CM Punk's back. I haven't watched wrestling in like 10 years. I'll check him out, see what he's doing." But it's not. It's not like if Stone Cold Steve Austin started lacing up the boots again. Like millions of people would start watching again if Austin wrestled again.
Kevin, imagine if June 27th, 2011, instead of, because Austin was on that show, he was there, instead of CM Punk doing the pipe bomb on Cena, you have Steve Austin comes out there, stands on the stage with a beer, rips Cena for like 4 minutes, talks about how bad the WWE's gotten. Do you think numbers would have gone down on average 10% over the next 2 months?
Nope.
Or do you think numbers would have gone up about 25% and they'd be getting 6 to 7 million viewers a show with Austin about to compete in his first match at like SummerSlam? You know, like these are the uncomfortable discussions that no one's going to have about this time period and just Punk in general. And this is coming from me, someone who, contrary to what I'm saying at the moment, was an absolute massive Punk fan, loved the guy. Like, this is coming, I watched that CM Punk Best of All DVD about 42 times. You know, like I'm a massive fan of the guy, but these are objective facts. If Steve Austin did the pipe bomb and talked about how Cena killed the business and how wrestling was better when men were men, and he wants to take Cena out at SummerSlam and, you know, stomp him dry, and he's going to drink beer over Cena's dead corpse. If you heard Austin saying that about Cena on June 27th, 2011, Kevin, Lord knows where wrestling would be. There wouldn't be the complaining culture. Everything would be so much different. Numbers at that point would be like 7 million viewers on the road to SummerSlam. But what do I know? What do I know?
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's the thing. Just this thing with Austin and Punk. It's like, you compare the two. People say CM Punk is the modern day Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like, how? I don't see it. Anybody that's like anti-authority gets compared to Austin. Daniel Bryan, Becky Lynch.
Becky Lynch. Yep.
Like, how? How are you Austin? You know, but I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say about Punk and Bryan before we get to Finn Balor and SmackDown?
Well, it's a fascinating. It's such a good discussion to have, and it's such an interesting one. That's the best way to put it. I mean, not that that's really any in-depth, groundbreaking analysis, Kevin. It's an interesting conversation, but like, you know, it's something that needs to be spoken of, I guess, in depth a bit more. Just like the impact of, I mean, Punk especially, because I mean, the quote's always been, you know, what was it? Punk awoke the Smarks, Bryan empowered them, and then I say Balor validated them. That's always what I say, and it rings true, because I mean, that's CM Punk pipe bomb. I'm not going about this much longer, but I mean, in the short term, there was a 10%, roughly 10% dip in numbers, and also for the people who say, "Oh, what about Punk's segments? Maybe they rated really well." They really didn't. The Bush is about 100K viewers on average. Punk at the time, he awoke everyone. It was a really good reception, and then he changed wrestling for the long term. Like, he changed wrestling for the worse, and in the short term, it didn't do anything. So, yeah, there you go, Kevin. Are you ready to move on?
Yes. Yeah. Let me make this last point before I forget.
Yeah.
And saying a wrestler is not a draw, that's not a slander. That's not an insult. Like just because you think someone's not a draw doesn't mean you hate them. I love Shawn Michaels. He's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. But Shawn Michaels was not a draw his first time around. He was like, WWE was in the toilet when Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart were on top in the mid '90s. And it's not, and we love Shawn Michaels. Everyone loves Shawn Michaels. You get Daniel Bryan. I used to love Daniel Bryan. Like, back, I was young, when I was younger, I was a big Daniel Bryan fan. He's not a draw, and it's okay. It's not a big deal. Like, not everybody's meant to be a draw. Even my favorite wrestler ever, Eddie Guerrero, he wasn't that big of a draw. He admitted that he brought numbers down. House shows were down, and everything was universally down when Eddie was champion. And we all still love Eddie, you know? So it's not a negative thing to be labeled as not a draw. Not everyone can be a draw. It's just objective. It's facts. Not everybody can be Stone Cold Steve Austin. Not everybody can be Brock Lesnar. Not everybody can be Triple H. Those guys are 1 in a million.
Yeah, real legit. So that's that discussion. And now we move on to a different conversation. This one, I mean, I mentioned him a moment ago, but the whole CM Punk awoke the Smarks, Bryan empowered them, Balor validated them. We're going to mention the third guy now in that trifecta, Finn Balor. On SmackDown last week, they had Finn Balor get interjected in the John Cena and Roman Reigns build for SummerSlam. So Kevin, I tweeted the following when it comes to this. I tweet, only WWE could take John Cena versus Roman Reigns to SummerSlam and make the story all about Finn Balor. Legit, a 4-year-old could easily book 1 month of dope Cena Reigns build, and I did a crying face emoji. So I want to get your thoughts on that before we do anything. What do you think of them interjecting Finn Balor into the main event of SummerSlam? Just build.
I think it's disgusting. I really do. I think it's not wrestling. Like, picture, let's go back to, let's just go back to 2011. Imagine 2011, right, on Money in the Bank 2011, in the build-up, you have CM Punk and John Cena feuding. Imagine R-Truth gets injected into the middle of the feud, all of a sudden. The feud becomes about, R-Truth is getting under Cena's skin. Oh, he's on CM Punk's side. Or you go back to 2001. You have Stone Cold versus Rock on the way to WrestleMania 17. Vince McMahon brings out Val Venus. He's like, Val Venus is going to face The Rock tonight on Raw. And it's going to be about The Rock. And and then they're teasing a triple threat match. Stone Cold, Rock, and Val Venus. No, why can't we just get a one-on-one? Cena's not going to be around forever. Who knows? This might be Cena's last run in WWE. And movie producers and the production companies might not let Cena wrestle again. So why not just do Cena Reigns one-on-one? No distractions. Let them...
I think a better analogy is you take WrestleMania 18, Rock versus Hulk Hogan. You've got, I believe, you have Rock being the babyface, calling out the evil NWO Hulk Hogan for this big epic dream match at WrestleMania. Hulk Hogan comes out at the end of Raw and goes, "Damn, brother! Decline your challenge, brother! I'd rather face Dean Malenko instead, brother!" And that's your build. And people are telling me, this is just 1 week. Let's see where it goes. I don't care if they're going to have Cena sign the contract instead and it's a ruse. That's not the point. Why do you need to get Balor involved? There's just no need for it, Kevin. All you need to do is... Kevin, the booking, some people... I do booking a lot on my channel, and people are like, you're really good with that. I'm like, it's just logic. It's common sense, Kevin. All you need to do is have a dope promo face-off with Cena and Reigns going back and forth, dissing each other. You can do a contract signing with the two where they run it back from the 2017 one. You can have a big brawl with the two on the go-home show, potentially. You can have Cena coming out as a Doctor of Thugonomics 1 week, Reigns coming out in a Shield vest 1 week for banter. There's a month's build. There you go. But no, Kevin, no. Let's get a 40-year-old underwear model from NXT who could barely draw 600,000 viewers as their champion. Let's have him come up to the main roster, and within 2 weeks, he's apparently the supposed SummerSlam opponent. And it's like, well, just what are you doing? Only WWE could ruin this, Kevin. I swear to God.
Yeah, it's shocking. It really is. I really did think they could drop the ball on this one. I really didn't think so. If you would have told me that Finn Balor was going to be the big debut on SmackDown, with the first SmackDown with fans, I would have laughed. I would have just laughed at you and been like, yeah, okay, haha. Finn Balor's going to be in NXT having great matches, chopping people, headbutting people. There's no way they can put him on SmackDown. Not only do they bring him up to SmackDown, that's okay, whatever. You want to bring Finn Balor up to SmackDown, I don't care. But now he's out there with his nuts out. Literally, his nuts are literally out on live television that children are watching. They have a 40-year-old man who looks like he should be on a poster outside of a Calvin Klein store at the mall. He's got his nuts out on live television, getting in the ring with Roman Reigns and John Cena. He's in the main event scene. Oh, you want to bring him back? You want to have him job to Big E and Apollo Crews? That's great. He could come out. He doesn't even need an entrance. Just bring him out. Let him lose to Big E in 5 seconds so Big E can look strong as Mr. Money in the Bank. But no, you put him in the worst possible position, right in the middle of the main event. It's gross.
Why do they do this?
He had his nuts out.
Bro, his testicles were on live TV, bro. He was openly flashing them, bro. What is this, bro? God. Just Kevin. And then the argument's always, well, 5 years ago, he never got his chance to be champion. He got injured then. That was his time. It shouldn't have been back then, but it was. And he got hurt. because he's made of glass. He got hurt. Now 5 years later, when you've got our tribal god running around, being the best thing we've seen wrestling in several years, now when Roman Reigns is the best thing going, we'll bring Balor up and we'll bring him up because we can. So Balor beat Reigns. Why? Kevin, 5 years ago, the only reason they did it was because Reigns had the PED suspension. You did a video on this. You covered this. And now what? What's Balor's case now? Well, 5 years ago, I should have won the title. This is like if in 5 years' time you have Mustafa Ali come out confronting six-time champion Parker Bordeaux saying, oh, well, 8 years ago, I had my moment robbed by Kofi Kingston. I should be champion now. That's not how the business works. You lost your... Kevin, he got injured. Deal with it. Okay? Tough. You shouldn't be beating a tribal god because from 5 years ago, my shoulder blew out because Seth Rollins is an incompetent wrestler. Like, it just doesn't work that way. Kevin, stop me. Please, say something.
No, keep going. You're spitting facts right now. These are truth bombs.
No, it's ridiculous. And then people like me are demonized for saying this. Oh my god, how can you not like Finn Balor? Like, what? Like, dude,
how can you like Finn Balor? That's the question I ask people.
What about him?
About Finn Balor? Do you go to Calvin Klein and stare at the men that are on the wall at the mall? Like, is that what you do when you go to the mall? Because that's Finn Balor. Like, that's what you're looking at. And if you do that, I'm not judging. But who is Finn Balor's audience?
Well, Kevin, there is an audience for that. But you don't need to interject that into Cena versus Reigns. What next? When you're building for Reigns versus Rock at 38 or 39, you're going to interject Sami Zayn in there for like several weeks? Or we're building up towards... what other dream matches are there? Lashley and Brock. Lashley and Lesnar are having a match. Stuff. We'll put Johnny Gargano out there for a couple of weeks. Get him involved.
Yeah, we'll bring Johnny Gargano's testicles out there. We'll put him and his testicles out there with a headband on.
Yeah, we'll have Lashley or Lesnar, or probably Lashley, decline Lesnar's challenge for a WrestleMania match and instead take on Johnny. Because it's all part of the story. You're jumping ahead of yourself. You're so short-sighted.
It's disturbing.
Kevin.
And then these are the same people that say Daniel Bryan added to WrestleMania 37. He added to the story. He made the story better between Roman Reigns and Edge. How did Daniel Bryan make the Roman Reigns and Edge story better? The Roman Reigns and Edge story was supposed to be the story of Edge never being able to wrestle again, returning a year earlier, and then going into the Royal Rumble with a broken neck and winning the Royal Rumble after an hour long, and finally realizing his road to redemption. Instead, it was Daniel Bryan sitting in a chair saying, I'm not leaving the ring here. I'm not leaving the ring over there. How does that make us the story better? If you want to say Bryan made the match better, okay, whatever. He could do better moves than Roman Reigns and Edge. Okay. He could flip. He could do this. But he doesn't even do better moves than Roman Reigns and Edge. What does Daniel Bryan do that's better than Edge's spear? Or Roman Reigns' flying drop kick when the guy's laying on the apron? What does Daniel Bryan do that's better? Daniel Bryan is not a Kenny Omega in the ring. He's not a Cedric Alexander in the ring.
Kevin.
God.
It's disappointing to see because, like, this year's WrestleMania, people say that it made the story so much better because Bryan was involved. And, yeah, okay, I mean, honestly, yeah, you just think that, all good. But the fact of the matter is, the main event scene on WWE's A show and the build-up to the biggest show of the year was Daniel Bryan, a 40-year-old man with a history of neck surgeries and, he looks like a Starbucks employee sitting in the ring complaining. How is that supposed to inspire the next generation of kids? How's that supposed to make kids rush to Target and buy your action figure? What about that is going to make kids want to rush and buy a Daniel Bryan t-shirt because he sat in the middle of the ring and said, I had a low ambition score. I should have made it a better WrestleMania. And then that transitions this Finn Balor thing. Now what? Fergal Devitt's here. Okay, he's a 40-year-old man who every time he has a big match gets injured. Great. Oh, but it's just for 1 week. It's okay. You're being short-sighted. Kevin, instead of Finn Balor getting involved, we should be seeing Cena and Roman Reigns having heated promo offs. We should be having Cena and Reigns doing a contract signing, a brawl, a night-long storyline where, God forbid, we've got Reigns sending an army of hitmen from Samoa after Cena. Something. Have fun with it. have Cena be like, "Hey, Jack, you ain't gonna take me down," as he's like punching just like Samoan Hitman. It's like, where's the fun? Where's the creativity? And WWE's creativity is, we're going to put an underwear model who's popping his nuts out on TV. Put him in the match. Get him involved.
His nuts out. He had his nuts out on live television. I can't get over that. How did Vince McMahon look at that and say, "Oh, damn it, pal, that's the guy I want in my main event"? What happened to Vince? What is wrong? Is Vince not running the show anymore? Who's running the show? That's okay with Finn Balor with his nuts out being in the main event of SmackDown.
Triple H. That's your guy.
Yeah.
Finn Balor, I see how tight your trunks are. Get out there.
Yeah, because Triple H doesn't want to push people that look like him. He doesn't want anyone to be compared to his legacy.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. So if you're a big guy like Cross, you're going to lose every main roster match you have. If you're a little guy like Finn, you're going to win your matches because Triple H deep down knows the people like that, like Finn Balor, will never be those mainstream stars like Cena or Reigns or what have you. And Triple H, with all his resentments, going to make sure guys who look like stars are held down. Guys who look like Finn Balor, all they're going to do, they're going to pop their nuts out. They're going to ruin storylines. They're going to make people not want to watch. And wrestling will be dead.
He had his testicles out. I can't
How
get
can
over
people
it.
defend that? How can people defend that? And that was the same guy, Kevin, literally an hour and a half after that, where he made his entrance, and we had the visual on the screen of the nuts popping out, and literally that circulated on Twitter. Like, I wasn't paying attention to that. I don't know who was, but then the screenshot, someone sees it, screenshot comes up, and it's like, my God, like, bro, this is a 40-year-old man doing this. Like, this is ridiculous, bro.
You're absolutely ridiculous. Jeez.
Just,
God, well, this has been a rant-filled elite. This has been a rant-filled elite heat. We're about an hour in.
What has been happening? What has happened? I mean, Kevin, I guess, yeah. I mean, those are the main two stories. Really just, the main theme for this is really just that quote of Punk awoke the Smarks, Bryan empowered them, and Finn Balor validated them. And this elite heat today, featuring Punk to AEW, Bryan to AEW, Finn Balor, for no reason, getting heavily involved into the main event of SummerSlam in a true dream match after being on the main roster 2 weeks. Kevin, this is literally what happened 5 years ago. Balor just shows up and all of a sudden, he's in the main event. And no one called it out then, but I feel the need to now. Now that I have some sort of a platform, why is this being stood for? Why is this being validated for? And why do you have the biggest creator in the community saying this guy should beat Roman Reigns? Can I call that out as well?
Yeah, go ahead.
Why is that a thing? Like it's just it's such a dangerous precedent, and it doesn't bode well for what wrestling will turn into and continue to be when you've got people like Finn Balor showing up for 2 weeks after a dodgy NXT stint, getting injured every week. Now all of a sudden Balor needs to main event SummerSlam and beat Reigns, apparently, according to these people. So I don't know, Kevin. What do you think?
I got no comment at this point. I have nothing else left to say about this. I wanted Cena Reigns is ruined.
Yeah, but Kevin, if they do a triple threat with Finn Balor, John Cena, Roman Reigns, the match will be better.
Yeah, the wrestling match, totally, it'll be totally better.
And then what? Are you going to do Cena vs Reigns at TLC this year instead? Because at the big show where we're supposed to have 70,000, even though because of COVID, that probably won't happen anymore. The big show where everyone wants to see Cena Reigns at like the second biggest show of the year, or at this point the biggest show of the year. Let's not do that. Let's just get Finn Balor involved for literally no reason. Let's just ruin that for everyone who wants to see it, and we'll do Cena vs Reigns at a random C pay-per-view. Well, not even C pay-per-view, a C-level Peacock special in 4 months' time, pal.
If they interject Finn Balor into the main event of SummerSlam and make John Cena vs Roman Reigns into a triple threat match, that will seriously challenge my ability to be a fan of wrestling anymore. Like that would be a really tough test to continue to watch this stuff, man.
Kevin, if they do that, we're going to turn into either all Elite Heat and just cover AEW exclusively, or we're going to become just an NBA podcast. We're just going to leave wrestling in the dust. We're going to move on talking about Westbrook and the Lakers and who's going to win the title next year and MVP favorites, and we're going to turn to the next First Take Undisputed. Because, my God, imagine, Balor shows up 2 weeks after drawing 530,000 people every week on NXT as the champion and interjects himself and beats Reigns. If Finn Balor beats Roman Reigns, I'll probably get terminated off YouTube for the rant I'll do, but nonetheless.
Yeah, we'll just have to turn it into super negative. You know, we're already negative enough, and we'll just have to go the 100% fully negative route and just bury
Yeah,
everything
we'll turn
WWE
it into
does.
J rants. We'll turn it into J rants, and I can't say half the things he says because I literally would get taken off the internet. God.
I think we're done for this one, huh? I got nothing else. I'm exhausted from all
Really? I feel pretty good, despite the fact that we've been talking about, I mean, one terrible wrestler in Balor, but outside of that, I mean, Bryan Danielson dropping people on his neck and nearly paralyzing himself in death matches, and CM Punk coming back and drawing in a negative 10% deficit or whatever. Yeah, this has been a fun Elite Heat, pal. Lots of content for you loyal Elite Heat diehards to enjoy, so yeah, there you are.
I'm just exhausted from arguing with people on Twitter about Daniel Bryan being a draw. Like, it's just enough.
Yeah, man, in 2007, he had a really good match with Hideo Itami in PWG in front of 40 people. So what do you know about wrestling?
He wrestled Austin Aries to an hour draw, pal, in a garage.
And what's Austin Aries done for himself? What, been with Christy Hemme? Like what is this? Like,
Yeah,
I
I don't know. All right, well, that's enough for this episode of Elite Heat. We'll talk to you guys on the next one.
Peace.